Hello, everybody. Welcome to Taped Crusaders, the podcast that reviews every single superhero TV show and movie ever made. I'm your co-host, Michael, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the episodes of the Japanese Spider-Man TV show, Supaidāman.
That's right, Spider-Man. And the reason we picked Spider-Man is because Dave Dubois is a big fan, and he exposed us to the show, I believe, for the first time. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I'd never seen it. But yeah, Dave Dubois, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me, y'all. It's very nice to be back. I've been waiting.
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, this is only an audio podcast, but you just did the double fist thing, right?
Oh, yes.
You're ready to fight. And we want to welcome back Bex Luthor. Thanks for joining us, Bex.
It's me, the emissary from hell.
All right. Thank you for joining us. You've missed a couple episodes, so you were sorely missed by our listeners.
Yeah, you know how it is. Sometimes. No, I don't. I have nothing.
You're rusty. It's okay. You'll get back into the swing of things soon. But anyway, also joining us this week, returning for another guest appearance, Champ Ian.
Hello, thanks for having me back. Your repeated fish out of water character in this podcast.
So yes, that's right. I forgot you reviewed Spider-Man with us, the Nicholas Hammond TV show, and that was the first ever exposure to a Spider-Man property.
Ever.
And this is now your second.
This is my second.
Funny because
amazing.
They're both probably the furthest thing that you can get from like what the heart of Spider-Man is, which is amazing.
Yes.
Hopefully that hasn't tainted you, but
to give a quick, Josh is going to give the synopsis, but before we get into that, let's just remind everybody that in the 1970s, Marvel, their flagship character was adapted into a TV show. It was not really a huge hit. The Incredible Hulk was much more successful, but around the same time, Japan did their own version of Spider-Man, and they kind of ditched everything about the character except the costume and some of the powers, right? Everything else is different, which we'll kind of fill you in on as we go along. But Josh is going to tell us what happened in this episode of Spider-Man, number 23, To the Love Academy of the Homeless Children, chosen specifically because of its title.
I was wondering why you picked episode 23.
Amazing.
Blame Doobie, not me. Anyway.
That's mine.
Okay, so this episode, we kind of start off normal, everyday life of Takuya, who is this version of Spider-Man. He is hanging out with his girlfriend and younger sister at it's an orphanage school, I think. They call it an orphanage, but they also call it a school, so not quite sure what it is. I'm sure it's something lost in the translation, maybe. But they're watching the kids play outside, and then this guy pulls up in this fancy sports car. He gets out, he introduces himself as Goro, and he's got a bunch of presents for all the kids, and he starts handing out cash, and Takuya's like, this is strange, something weird is going on. And Hitomi and Shinko, I believe her name is, his sister, explain that this guy used to be an orphan at the school, and he grew up very poor. He didn't have anybody. He didn't have family. So it's strange that he has money now, especially since Hitomi just recently caught up with him. And a week ago, he had no money to his name. He had just been laid off from his job, and he was desperate for cash. So him rolling up in this fancy suit and car and having all these presents was strange. So he takes off, and then later on, kind of the same thing happens where his sister is showing off all this fancy jewelry that she got from him. So he's like, okay, something's not right. I'm gonna go and follow this guy and see what's going on. So he follows him into the city, and he tracks him all the way down to this building. He goes inside. So Takuya decides to climb through the air ducts, and he starts spying on him through there. And he learns that he's been going to this secret casino in the city. And he's watching everybody play, and it seems like everybody is winning. everybody's getting the jackpot. They're betting on rabbit races and spider fights, and they're playing all these strange games where they're just like picking a number and they're like, yep, you won. So something strange is going on. And then Spider-Man's spider bracelet starts going off, and he realizes that something is off here, and he uses his secret like vision, like his x-ray vision type thing, and he looks at the people operating this casino, and he realizes that they all have a disguise on, and they are part of the Cross Army, the Iron Cross Army. Thank you. So we know that Goro is in some sort of trouble now. He decides to follow him out, and then he also sees this like vile goblin duck looking woman named Sorceress Beast, and she's running this place. She has this big staff with a curl on the end, and she follows him outside and starts blasting him, and thankfully he's able to get away. Before that, he also learns that she has been rigging the casino so that everybody wins to get more and more people to join. Mm-hmm. And her plan is to then make everybody lose so that way they're all indebted to her. So after learning this, he leaves. She chases him out and starts blasting him. And then he ends up like running away. He's going through like sewers and stuff, and he escapes, and he ends up catching up with Goro. And we learn that in that time, he actually lost all of his money. He has nothing left, and he's like begging Spider-Man for just a little bit of cash so he can keep gambling, so he can get back to you know, his wealth that he used to have. Obviously, Takuya refuses, and we then see him later on going into the school and rummaging through some like documents, and then he leaves. And then he runs back to the casino, and he bets the deed to the school / orphanage on a rabbit race, I believe it was. And of course, Sorceress Beast whispers in the rabbit's ear to win. So he loses the money, and he loses the orphanage. And so later on, we see our Tomi and Takuya. They're back at the school, and a bunch of guys from the Cross Army show up, and they start rummaging the place and taking it over. And there's nothing that they can really do because they've got the deed to the place. So Takuya really doesn't have much of a choice here but to don the Spider-Man costume and kind of go battle Sorceress Beast. And that's really... Oh, so there's also like a chase scene in between, and Goro almost dies. But really, it's not important because it ends immediately after this like chase scene with a bunch of bad guys, which leads him to Sorceress Beast, who transforms into a gigantic woman and starts like threatening him. So he calls his car. It's not Leopardon he calls.
It's the Spider Machine GP7.
That's right. And I mean, he blasts her with it. Like he tells it to shoot her, and then she explodes, and that's it. They get the deed back. Everything's fine. It says to be continued.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait, no, he calls the Spider Machine the car to then call the Marveler. That's what flies around.
That's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
There's
You're
three
right.
robots in this.
That's right.
2 of them are the same robot.
Yeah, and that's the end. Like, there's no wrap up to the story. She explodes, and then I don't think anything else happens, right? Correct me if
Then
I'm
they
wrong.
just pan and they have the school back, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they get the school back, and then I think at least the one that I watched, there was a to be continued.
Yes.
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 And I'm very curious if Roach Boy, The Great War, is actually a continuation.
No.
No.
So wait, before we go forward, Dave, you are a big Spider-Man fan. Have you not seen all the episodes yet?
I have, but I mean, it's also it's very easy for them all to get completely blurred together. I'm not going to say there's a formula to it, but wow, there's a formula to it.
Yeah.
And eventually too, like what'll happen is it'll become my secondary screen. Just because just because I sometimes I feel like that kid that's just so excited for that last 10 minutes.
Yes.
So when I actually sit down and watch something like this where I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch it to talk about it later, where I'm just like, oh, wow. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack.
Well, I remember, speaking of, I remember as a kid, they used to, tell me if you guys remember this, they used to have Godzilla on TV every other day. They would rotate, I believe it was Godzilla with Ultraman. So if you were to watch, I don't know what the name of the show was, but if you watched it, it would be like a half hour of a movie every day rotated with Ultraman, I think. Anyway,
wow.
This was Detroit TV. And I remember watching one of the Godzilla ones and feel like I was waiting hours and hours for Godzilla to show up. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there. But Champion, before we go forward, this was your first exposure to Spider-Man and your second exposure to anything Spider-Man. So tell us, first comparing this to the American version that you saw, what did you think of this Spider-Man?
Well, diametrically opposed is an understatement. The costume is the only thing that connects these two things. Just in terms of general Spider-Man, the fact that Takuya, the Japanese Peter Parker analog, he's a motocross cyclist, and
Yeah.
like it's just so bonkers. I mean, when I sat down and watched the very first episode, I started the very first episode. 30 seconds in, it's completely off the rails. Change Leopardon. What the hell is this thing flying? Why is he turning into a giant leopard robot?
Why not a spider robot? Yes.
Why not a spider robot? I think there were some spider webs like drawn on his chest or something like that. And I very quickly became absolutely obsessed with this. I watched the next episode, and then the episode after that, and then the episode after that.
Wow.
And Dave, there is a formula to it, isn't there? I mean,
A little bit.
every single episode, the second half is identical, right down for the most part to the order in which Spider-Man uses his weapons.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can predict it. It's charming in a way,
Yeah.
but just in general, I was impressed with it, particularly the special effects, in a way that I wasn't with the North American 1977 Spider-Man. Yes, I became obsessed with it, and if it weren't for a little something called The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, I would probably have watched the entire thing in one sitting, right? But I had to get back to another Goro, which, Bex probably gets that joke and nobody else. But
Josh gets it.
Josh gets it too?
Oh, yeah, he's playing.
But no, this was...
well, here's the thing.
Aren't many things that I can say changed me, and this is something that I'm a different person having watched
interesting.
Interesting.
All right.
Hopefully in a good way.
this. In a way that I can't even...
Describe in words. I will definitely say, now that this is the second episode I've watched, the editing is much better. The pacing is much better. Like, say what you will about the show, but there's actually some thought put into the plot. Much more so than the American one. That American episode we watched, the pilot, was so badly written. And Dave, if you've never seen the American one, I encourage you to watch it one day, just for comparison.
I have.
It's a mess.
You have
Yes.
watched it.
I have, and it is just there's the thing like this one, around the same time, but this one has just so much charm to it, where the other one just doesn't.
Right.
I think that's the big difference. I think that we just talked about the American Spider-Man show, and a couple of things that we didn't like about it was, well, the writing was bad. It was shot horribly, like all that kind of like visual stuff. But on top of that, it was Spider-Man is not right. That's not really what Peter Parker does. Or like, why are there no supervillains? Where's Dr. Octopus or Kurt Connors like would fit into that story, right? We were like, it just doesn't feel like Spider-Man. This also does not feel like Spider-Man, like at all. The only thing that's Spider-Man about it is the fact that his name is Spider-Man and he's got the costume on. Everything else is different, but it works because it's fun, it's creative, it's fresh, new. Like, there's so much about it that is charming and endearing that you just want to keep watching it. So, is this Spider-Man? Not at all, but it's one of my favorite Spider-Man things because it's just so fun.
Well, and I think the key is that the Japanese Spider-Man's not ashamed to be a fun action superhero show for kids, whereas the American one, what was it trying to do? Was it trying to appeal to adults? Because it was horribly written. Yeah,
it was like a strange in between where it wanted to be a Spider-Man show for kids, but then it was also like, well, we got to make it a cop drama now because we got to get the adults in. This is like, no, this is for the kids. Saturday mornings, eating sugary cereal. Like, this is what this show is, and it's 100%. So fun for that. Yeah.
Speaking of it being for kids, I was criticizing the Iron Cross Army for their choice of casino games.
Right.
Because I was sitting there, I was like, as soon as the casino, I was like, oh, we're going to see some pachinko, we're going to see some baccarat, like we're going to get it in. Then it was just like really primary color rabbit races and chick races. And I'm like, oh, the Iron Cross. And I'm like, Dave, you love things that are written for children. So like, let's just remember that. Like, kids don't understand what pachinko or like roulette and all this other games are. It's like, but they can understand, oh, the bunny won the race. And I'm like, oh, okay, just chill out. And as far as a vehicle for taking you from zero to giant monster fight, it's, it's kind of unique, like corrupting people through gambling. I don't know.
That's what I mean. It was clever. It was smart. Bex Luthor, what'd you think of this episode? Because now you've seen a few episodes, right?
I've seen many Japanese Spider-Man. Because I love Sentai. Sentai. Not the other thing that rhymes with Sentai. I love Super Sentai. Don't even worry about it. No, so I love Japanese Spider-Man, and I love this sort of Japanese Super Sentai style. I love Kamen Rider. I love all of that stuff. So this is just exactly. It's literally just Power Rangers, but it's Spider-Man instead. And that, I mean, it made Power Rangers.
Yes.
So like, every part of this is just an episode of Power Rangers. It's just there's a problem. Gotta transform into your outfit. Gotta do some digging. There's a character's bad guy's introduced. You gotta get in your Zord. Your Zord turns into a bigger Zord. The monster turns into a bigger monster. Fight monster episodes. Everybody goes home. That's every episode of Power Rangers, and that's every episode of this show too. So
it's the ongoing tradition.
And let's be clear. One thing.
Go ahead.
Power Rangers. How many seasons of that are there? Aren't there like
30?
Yeah.
30th anniversary just happened.
Wow.
Yeah, dude.
And I can't wait because the new season starts in the fall. Honestly, I'm a huge Power Rangers fan. I watch it with my partner. We love Power Rangers in this house. Probably a lot, way too much, but yeah. So I love all of the little teeny tiny things in this. I love how when he starts the fight, there's like 30 seconds of just poses.
Yes.
And like the same, like 1 second.
The same hand gestures.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we shoot the web, and then also this Spider-Man has X-ray vision, which is really cool.
Wild.
And his spider sense isn't like Peter's spider sense, where it denotes like harm coming to him. It just like is like his internal thoughts is like, hey, you should probably take the left path and not the right path. It's just,
well,
and who could have taken Spider-Man and made it into this?
Right.
It's
And
perfect.
the thing is I didn't. I mean, I was a little bit too old for Power Rangers when it came out, but I did grow up with like Transor Z, Robotech, Voltron, right? And obviously the Godzilla movies and Ultraman. So I always felt like Japanese shows got action better than American shows. And the thing you mentioned about like the little montage of like the jump cuts of him posing and all that stuff, like if this was a film, it would be considered revolutionary filmmaking. But because it's a kids, Saturday morning show, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of just dismissed as like this kitsch. But really, these guys were basically just going, how can we make this cool? Who gives a shit about the rules? Let's just make it cool. And they did it, right? Yep. Throw in a robot, throw in a vehicle, throw in like this crazy montage you mentioned where he's not even in the same room. He's in a different room now, just posing.
Yeah.
Who cares, right? Kids don't care. They love it.
Yeah,
No,
because then
I
I
think
could
he's-
do those poses at home because I'm
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Right. Exactly. Like they're onto something. And I love the way he like runs down the street with that like kind of like hunched over with like that pose.
The
Oh, yeah.
scuttle.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
even like the American version, the camera is so dull. In this show, the camera's up, the camera's down, it's following him around, and it's just so much more creative,
Yeah, there's a shot in this where Takuya's on the rooftops running, and then Goro's on the street level also running, and he's chasing him. And I was like, "That's really cool. I really like that."
Right.
I think there was an excitement in like Japanese filmmaking or in television at the time. It just they were like hit their stride, and they were just like you said, they weren't constrained by, let's follow this and this formula. Let's follow crazy form. Let's follow the simplest formula, but make everything crazy in it.
Right. Champion, are you a fan of the old Godzilla films?
I haven't really seen much of that. My only real exposure, I've seen little Power Rangers here and there. I only recently learned the connection to this sort of thing. I was watching an episode of the Netflix series The Toys That Made Us.
Yes. Great
And
show.
they went through a bit of that. Transformers, I guess, would have been an earlier exposure to this entire thing as well. I didn't really get into the whole Japanese movies and television until fairly recently.
Sure. Okay. Because even like even when I was a kid, like for example, the opening. Does everyone remember the opening of Thundercats, the cartoon?
Oh, yeah.
Holy Moses! I would watch the show every day just to see that opening.
So good.
Yeah, because the entire opening has the budget of a whole episode, but it's just
Right.
1 minute of animation, right? So they went crazy with the openings. Every show did in the 80s, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, not really much respect. Like, let's be clear, Transformers is a household name again, but there was a period in the 90s where no one knew what the hell Transformers was other than my generation of kids that were growing up. Like, they knew what Transformers was, but I remember talking to kids that were a little bit older than me. They didn't know what an Optimus Prime was. They had no idea. Because it was like once the fad faded away, it just disappeared from pop culture. And it didn't start to come back until my generation got old enough to start becoming like writers in Family Guy or writers in The Simpsons. And they would make references and jokes like Robot Chicken and stuff like that. But there was a weird gap, just like Star Wars. There was a gap in the late 80s where like Star Wars disappeared from pop culture. Ian, I'm sure you remember that, right?
I think in Transformers, a lot of us are just scarred by Optimus Prime's death, and we just don't want to talk about it anymore.
Still crying, yeah.
It's a good
But
movie,
anyway,
though.
what's that?
Yeah.
That's a good movie, though.
Yeah, oh, it is a good movie.
Oh, so good. I also find with a lot of this Japanese cinema and television, like the tokusatsu and the kaiju movies, the thing that as a kid, because I was post Star Wars, like Star Wars nailed the special effects so hard that they were inspired by people like E.G. Tsuburaya and people doing stuff like this that were using the practical effects, and they just did it so good that they made everything else look obsolete. So I would see in the TV guide Godzilla versus King Kong double feature Saturday afternoon, and I'd be like, here we go, this is the fight of the century. And as a kid I'm just like, Star Wars, I'm like, this is boring. and then you get a little bit of a fight, and you're like, this is some guy in a costume. This is what? So I feel like Star Wars undermined this kind of special effect for a while, and then it wasn't. And then in the '90s, like when I think of the Power Rangers, like you said, I'm a little bit too old for the Power Rangers, but just the way that it was presented to us too, like with the American cast and what have you.
Right.
It just was like, there's a bit of excitement behind it again. And now looking back, I just have this nostalgia of bored Saturday afternoons.
Right. And I don't know. Like even I remember Godzilla. Like I've said before, when Batman Adam West was on in the early '80s, I thought it was brand new. I had no idea it was from the '60s. And I remember seeing Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, because if you remember I think it was the first time he meets him. First, it's just two Godzillas, and then he gets burned by his atomic breath, and then it burns away the flesh, and it's just the robot underneath. And as far as I was concerned, that was live television. No one had ever seen that like, I'm looking at, does anyone see this? This is amazing. They knew what they were doing back then, like how to, oh my God, like as a kid, it just blew me away. So this show gets that. The makers of the American Spider-Man show do not get it, unfortunately.
No, definitely not. No, what did y'all think of the Machine Bem?
Spider-Man.
What else did I really?
Did I drop
kids that gambling's bad. It's a good lesson, right?
Yes, I agree.
And I was gonna agree with Dave about the children's gambling games that are being played. Like it's because gambling is a big addiction in Japan, but like they don't bet on spider fights. There's like Pachinko machines and like the stuff like that. So like I loved the little bunnies, but I did not like when they held the bunnies by the ears.
Yeah.
But it was the 70s. Who even knows what was going on? So and they actually like got spiders to fight. The spiders fight.
Battle Royale.
I think that they were like fighting over food or something. It looked like they were attacking another bug, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The machine. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The Machine Bem itself, like there was a close up of her, and I was really taken aback, and I paused it because it looked like a nightmare version of I don't know if you're familiar, Garcia from Criminal Minds.
Oh,
she's like the computer. She's the computer expert, and it just paused, and I was like, that's like a nightmare version of Garcia. Like she's very like blonde, big hair, and pink glasses and stuff, and it was like just this weird. Oh, it was very unsettling at times. I found.
So
there's just a whole bunch of like little things in this episode that are so funny, like how Takuya has to pretend to be weak, and his sister's just like, "Wow, you're embarrassing. It's how much of a coward you are."
Yeah,
they just call him out on it.
It's like a recurring thing as well in this show. Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. If a bunch of gangsters come and take the orphanage, I'm not going to fight them. I guess I should have that conversation with my sister now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Ian, are you going to eventually complete this series? I'm eventually going to complete this series once I finish my Zelda. One of the things that Josh, could you remind me, when you were watching this, what was the name of the Machine Bem in your version? Sorceress something?
Sorceress Beast?
Sorceress Beast. Because that's interesting, because this is something that maybe we don't consider, that when we're watching this, we're sort of at the mercy of whoever did the subtitles.
Right.
To sort of gain the plot and the nuance of it. You mentioned that you weren't sure if this was a school or an orphanage. Spider-Man has his little, he's the emissary of hell that he drops whenever he's about to fight in the last third of the episode. On my version, instead of the emissary from hell, he was, quote, the man who sheds tears for children without homes, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it was an orphanage. And the Machine Bem in my version was named Witch Ape.
Oh.
Witch Ape. Okay.
Witch Ape.
Yep.
Nice.
So just that's a little detail that I noticed when you were giving the synopsis. But to answer your question, Mike, yes, I absolutely will be watching the rest of these, probably all in one sitting.
It is interesting that there's no official release of this.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
I
make
mean,
sense.
I watched it legally for sure, but
Yeah, you hopped in your time machine.
yeah, it went back to Japan in the 70s.
Yeah.
And the thing is they could make money doing absolutely they would make money. And I'm sure at one point they were ashamed, this isn't good enough to, taint the image of Spider-Man. But people would eat this up now for sure, right?
Well, it's not that they were ashamed. It was that Toei didn't want Marvel to have anything to do with this because in the comics, in the Spider-Verse saga, they have Japanese Spider-Man show up, and originally Toei was pissed. And they were like, take him out. And then they realized that the fans were like, we love Japanese Spider-Man. They were like, I guess you can keep him. So they didn't want this to leave Japan.
Okay.
Except too late, because he's going to be in the movie I'm seeing on Friday.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I did come across, in trying to find some sort of synopsis and whatnot, I did come across an infograph that kind of claimed that whatever universe is some sort of, y'all would know way more about that than I do. Whatever Marvel universe, it was it had a number for it.
Oh,
so I don't know.
The comics is 616. Yeah.
So it's that must be some sort of multiverse bit. So
yeah. Takuya is in Earth 51778.
Oh, there you go.
God bless.
A lot of these companies, I'm not sure. Whatever company owns Godzilla, I think it is.
Toho.
Yeah, Toho. They have this weird thing where, for example, I think it was when Criterion wanted to put out their version of Godzilla. They're like, okay, for every other company on Earth, they give them the master reel-to-reel originals. Here you go, you can remaster it. Toho's like, you know what? We own the original. We're gonna give you the Betamax 3rd generation copy. You can have that. You can do what you want with it. But you can't. For some reason, I don't know if it's like an anti-American thing or something, but they're very protective of their properties. So I don't know.
Well, let's take a look at all of the Japanese properties that Hollywood has adapted. So I'd be protective too.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
I wonder
the
too.
Roland Emmerich Godzilla's garbage, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder too if part of it is because of just lost media, because around the time too they weren't keeping records necessarily of the shows. It was kind of it was aired on TV the couple of times it aired, and then the recordings were just thrown out or destroyed or whatever. I think that there's even a few missing episodes of this show that were just never recorded and were kind of lost to time. So
that certainly happened with Doctor Who.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you're a Doctor Who fan, Dave?
I've seen every Doctor Who. Sorry. Up until some of the I got lost in the Peter Capaldi stuff because I was having trouble finding some of the specials and connecting dots. So I fell off. But to the point where I learned from that back in the day because they didn't have VCRs. Mm-hmm. People would record the audio and then take pictures of their screen. Yeah, and so some of these episodes that are lost are put together by people who have gotten together through the internet and have combined what audio they could. So the audio quality is so crap from from one place to another, but I did sit through them all. I did.
Well, we'll definitely have that conversation another time, but just to expand on that, they would literally, it was produced by the BBC as a time filler, and it'd be like, hey, we need a tape to film the 6 o'clock news. You got anything laying around? Yeah, look, it's an old episode of Doctor Who. No one needs that. And they would just tape over it with the 6 o'clock weather report. So yeah, a lot of episodes are gone forever.
But good news, I hear Doctor Who's supposed to be going to Disney Plus in Canada.
Yeah.
So you can catch up.
That is good because I do want to watch the old episodes, but I am very worried because isn't it partly owned by them now or something?
I think just streaming rights.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's just Canada as well. I don't think that they have the streaming rights necessarily even in the States.
Okay.
So...
Doctor Who podcast coming soon, folks. But anyway,
you can have my dad on.
There you go. So I think that wraps up our review of Spider-Man to the Love Academy of the Homeless Children, chosen specifically for its title, as we said.
Yes.
We want to thank you for joining us, Dave, again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you on. I mean, unfortunately, we're not going to be reviewing any Spider-Man episodes anytime soon, but maybe we'll have you on for a different show or a different movie.
I'd love that. I would love that.
And Champion, we want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me as always, guys. Appreciate it.
And I'm sure you'll be back on soon. We'll keep you posted for what we're reviewing in the next few months, upcoming months. Next week, 2 weeks from now, on Taped Crusaders, we are going to be reviewing Doctor Strange, the TV movie from the 1970s.
Oh.
That's a big if I can find a link somewhere. I'm sure it's available somewhere, but yeah.
Dude, that's not a good one.
If things go according to plan, we'll have Cousin Brandon on, who's canceled twice in a row, but well, maybe he'll join us next time. And on the next episode of Slam, we are reviewing everyone's favorite superhero, Johnny Thunder. So be sure to join us for that. Yeah. Anyway, okay, Josh, you can take it from here.
Oh yeah, thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Please let us know what you guys think about the episode and the stuff that we're talking about. Leave us a comment, leave us a review over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com, or you can also find us at Facebook or YouTube, also at the Comic Book Syndicate. All of our stuff is there and wherever you can find podcasts. So keep in touch. Let's keep that comics conversation going.
That's right. Until the next time, see you later.